This is the Ag Queen Podcast. This podcast explores the agriculture industry with the movers and shakers of those shaping it. Here's your host, Lori Boyer.
Welcome to the show. Thank you to my guests for joining me here today. Dylan Vaca is the brand and marketing manager for Delong Company, and Pat McQuillan will be joining us. He is the co-founder and president of Central Standard Craft Distillery in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Dylan, as we get started here today, the Delong Company has a program called Grown Climate Smart. Can you explain what this program is exactly?
So Grown Climate Smart is a subsidiary or a build-out initiative from the Delong Company. It's sustainable farming practices oriented, and then we're really working to prioritize and promote sustainable farming practices. So to give a little bit background, the Delong Company is, it's a sixth generation family-owned business out of Clinton, Wisconsin. The company has 37 different locations. I'll say the bulk of those locations are in the Wisconsin-Illinois region. It has 6 divisions within those locations, being agricultural and logistical sales, grain, exports, agronomy, seed, and wholesale feed. So the Delong Company itself is over 100 years and well-versed in the agriculture and grain commodities market. And we really saw a need for sustainability and from our corporate buyers and some other companies coming out here with these ESG and, sustainable goals. So they wrote a grant proposal to the Climate Smart Commodities grant that was, built by the USDA. It's a $3.1 billion grant. And the Delong Company won $40 million through 5 years to build out and promote sustainable farming practices. So we're calling it such, and we're calling it Grown Climate Smart. And we're excited about all of the opportunities and the sustainable grains and commodities that we can use through this program. And we're excited about the partnerships that we can build out of it and do a lot of positive things out in the market.
And sure, we'll be talking about a specific relationship with Pat here coming up. So you already have the grant money, is that right?
Yep. So basically in the past, I would say 7 to 8 months, we've been really working hard and diligent to enroll growers into our program. And basically, once we enroll growers, we make sure that they're doing these sustainable practices. There's 4 practices that our program really prioritizes right now, being cover crops, reduced or no-till, nutrient management plans, and windbreaks. So in the past 7 or 8 months, like I said before, we've been working hard to getting growers enrolled in our program. We have a little over 260,000 acres throughout 11 different states in our program. So once we get them through that enrollment process and what we call a proof of practice, where they show us that they did that practice and they went through and did those cover crops, or, they did a reduced or a no-till, we send them an incentive payment, a check here in December. So yeah, we've been working hard getting growers in there and, really trying to see, how much we can scale this program, not only this year, but in the coming years too.
How long is each grant, or what is the duration of those grants?
Yeah, so ours is 5 years. There's a couple different, different grants out there for different amounts of times, but ours is 5 years. And, like I said before, we're going to try to continue scaling this up. And just because we were able to enroll a lot of growers and acres this year and almost fulfill it to 100% as far as, being able to pay out over $7 million worth of incentive. We want to continue building upon it and not just, keep it at this, but in coming years, continue to grow it too. So.
Dylan, when I do interviews on sustainability, cover crops comes up all the time, things like rye. So what are the cover crops? What are some of the sustainability strategies that your program promotes?
Yeah, so kind of how we look at the cover crops is, as long as it stays a cover crop, obviously, and it doesn't become into a harvest rule, right? That's kind of where it loses that, being a cover crop and turns into a cash crop. Really what we follow is NRCS state guidelines of what constitutes a cover crop. So as long as those cover crop species, there's a whole bunch of them that are listed for each different state, kind of falls within there, and you're able to use that as a cover crop. So there's a whole bunch of different species you can use. And obviously, everyone's farmland and soil is not the same. So we have growers out in, New York doing different things and been growers in Wisconsin. So I think the flexibility of it and being able to utilize different cover crop species, that have different, seeding rates and dates and termination types, is one element of what has made the program successful.
Are you auditing those that are enrolled yearly?
Yeah. So through our program, there's a whole bunch of checks and balances through our program to make sure we're doing it the right way and, reporting it the right way. An element of that is an auditing process that, people that get enrolled in our program, there's a chance that a certain percentage, I should say, that they get audited. But at the same time, all of the information and data that we collect and, ultimately enroll people into our program with, it gets reported back to the USDA. So there's various amounts of checks and balances here. So, we're all on the same page and reporting the same data and the same, really interesting information that comes of it, because it's really eye-opening to see that a lot of growers are, thinking about sustainability and implementing that on the farm. So yeah, there's a lot of checks and balances that go along with it.
As I mentioned when we got started with the show here today, Pat McQuillan is joining us now. Pat McQuillan, once again, the co-founder and president of Central Standard Craft Distillery in Milwaukee. Pat, what is the tie-in then between the distillery and the Grown Climate Smart program?
Yep, that's correct. And it's actually, the timing works out somewhat perfectly for us because we've been distilling for 9 years, going on 10 years now. And we've always tried to get our grains from within, 150-mile radius. We always try and be as close as possible. Some of the grains just aren't as easy to get, but we've been pretty successful in the fact that we have a lot of farming around us. Our issue has been getting repeatable and good grain. And so we were struggling with that a little bit. And when we started working with Delong and Dylan and the program came along that he discussed, it just was somewhat of a no-brainer to us because of the way that they practice and what we're trying to accomplish too.
The farm to flask movement, as I've been told.
Yeah, right. I think it started with grain to glass, and now it's farm to flask. So we're all in on it for sure.
What grains do you procure then? What are you looking for your spirits?
Yep. So corn, rye, and barley are the top three that we use. We use a little bit of wheat and some specialty, like a whiskey that we do, an oat whiskey, something that's a little fun and different, gives it a little more of a sweetness to it. But those are the three main ingredients that most any distillery is going to use. Corn by far is probably the biggest one that we use because we use it in our vodka, our gin, our bourbons, our whiskeys. We use quite a bit of rye in our whiskeys as well. And then the barley after that. So
about how many pounds bushels, pounds? I don't know what a distillery buys that in.
Sure.
But about how many do you purchase on a yearly basis, would you say?
Yeah. So it's interesting. That number for us continues to grow, which is great. But I would say we're going through, about every time we do a mash, which we do 1 to 2 a week, depending on the scheduling, we're doing about 2,000 to 5,000 pounds per mash. So we extrapolate that out, it gets, pretty significant. As being an urban distillery, which was also important to us to try and keep jobs within the city of Milwaukee, we're a little bit landlocked too. So we're it's the scheduling of that and the amount of room that we have and the amount of barrels that we have. But we've seen a nice growth trajectory. We've also somewhat on purpose made it a little bit smaller over the last few years, because I'll tell you what, Lori, about the worst business model you can do is start a distillery by putting a bunch of liquid in a barrel and crossing your fingers and hoping it works, because you don't know if it's any good for a while, right? So it's got to sit in a barrel, and we've just been, as we've grown and know that we have a good product, we've been able to ramp up production too. So that's part of it. And having a partner like Grown Climate Smart and Delong has really now given us the confidence to go forward with that and really start pushing forward too.
Pat, do you have to pay a premium for growers who are growing in a sustainable way then?
For us, we haven't seen much of a difference in that. I think it's, the program that we've seen here with DeLong, there hasn't been much of a premium to it, which is great, right? There's maybe a couple of cents, but it's not anything that hurts us from that. We're also willing to pay a little bit more if we need to. One, from we want to be good partners and good stewards of what we're doing as we're giving back, and trying to do what we call a 360 degrees in all of this too. So after we're done with the product, can we give some of the grains back to the farms that they can use for nutrients as well? So all of this is kind of symbiotic for us, and we're willing to pay a little bit more if necessary. But thankfully, I think everybody sees where this is going and trying to keep their pricing in line.
And you're referring to distillers' dry grains, right?
Yeah, there's a variety of different ways it can be used. Yep.
That's a great point that you brought up about the premium, because that's definitely one goal of this program here, right? Is that we don't want to just do this program for 4 or 5 years. And then at the end of it, when we run out of incentives for growers for doing these sustainable farming practices, say, okay, thanks for participating. It was a great 5 years and that's it. Part of the program here and the end goal is ultimately to develop and build a market that, these grains will command a premium on. Part of that goal here is getting the grains, into the end product, that consumers can see in their everyday, life, like something that Pat has in his, distillery and the craft house and everything. So this is a great opportunity for us to really get the ball rolling on it because, as Pat said, and he's true on that, there hasn't really been, a premium paid for it yet or realized yet by the consumer or the market. But that's definitely something that we want to, get the ball rolling on and build up here because, in year 6, year 7, year 8 of the program, when we don't have incentives, we want to get that premium to be, such where we can pass that premium down to the grower as well. Because we're incentivizing growers for doing the right farming practices and doing, things that really enhance the soil and do a lot of things in that regard. So that's something that definitely that we're trying to achieve here in the long run.
Yeah. And that's a good point too, Dylan, because I know that USDA had a national survey here not too long ago, and there is discussion on will farmers keep the sustainable practices up without being incentivized. So hopefully that premium is where that kicks in then.
I would just say, in the grains that we've received, we can definitely tell that there's, a little like a freshness to it. I mean, there's some of the quality when you hold it and you smell it. And as it's coming off the still too, we've, again, been doing this long enough to notice the quality of what's in it that's coming out of it too. So we definitely recognize that. And we hope that as we can, maybe we're a small distillery, but hopefully the more people see, we have these little stickers that we're going to put on all the bottles and it'll be incorporated into our labels that'll say, that's hopefully somewhat of an advertising for them to say, well, what is that? And what does that mean? And hopefully the quality's in the bottle too. And we're doing our part that they'll maybe see that that's a part of it too and seek that out.
Pat, I thought I'd ask you too, because I'm in Northeast Colorado. So craft distilleries, wineries, breweries are just popping here in Colorado. And I interview a farmer here down the road that's all he's gone to is growing grains for distilleries, for actually a particular distillery along the Front Range. The part of the appeal for a consumer, and I'm a big whiskey girl, part of the appeal is knowing that backstory. It came from a local farm, knowing the farmers that produced it, and that all goes into the purchasing. Are you seeing that there in Wisconsin as well?
Yeah, for sure. I think the whole craft movement has been a part of a reason for that too. People just in general in their products want to know where they're coming from, and the closer they can feel to it, the better. We've had this discussion with Dylan and Aaron and their team of the more that we can put a face to the grain itself, it helps put in a different light when there's so much consumer noise, and how do you rise above that too? So especially in whiskey, right? Whiskey and bourbon is a huge category, and you walk into the store now and how do you notice the difference? So if there's any way to stand out and show that you're actually doing it the right way, I think the consumer will gravitate toward that, and they'll tell you with their pocketbook because they want to do that.
Agreed. Yeah. Dylan, did you want to add anything into that?
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. And that's part of, why, the Delong Company made the decision to, not just say, hey, we want to just do this program and get growers enrolled, right? They made the decision that, they wanted to make an offshoot and a brand here that can kind of tell that consumer, hey, when you see this brand name and this logo on products in the market, it was coming from sustainable farming practices and it's using sustainable ingredients and things like that. So that's part of building that market and telling a story with the brand and the logo and everything that goes along with it. Because consumers, like Pat said, are getting more and more conscious of the products they're buying, especially when it's such a busy space with, millions and millions of different, brands and products you can buy in each, industry. So that's a big thing that I definitely agree on.
Pat, what other goals do you have for your distillery?
Our distillery has been it's been very interesting. We started this, my business partner and I, 11 years ago when we overserved ourselves one night and decided we should start making our own. And that grew from being, just a fun little hobby and trying to grow into something to a full-time job. And we've seen this kind of growth trajectory for us to continue growing throughout the Midwest and hopefully telling our story in a way that helps people to understand craft spirits. It's not about us. It's about the collective we, I think, in some respects too, where there's enough room on the shelf. Look, Jim Beam and Maker's Mark and those guys, they've been doing it a really long time and they're really good at it, right? So giving people an outlet to see something smaller and see how that's crafted as well, we hopefully can be a mouthpiece for that and show what we do. And if they don't like us, at least they've given us a try and maybe give somebody else a try too. But I think that's what we're trying to do is we want to be innovative all the time too. And sometimes it doesn't have to be a groundbreaking, world-changing thing. But doing something like this with Grown Climate Smart is innovative, right? I mean, it's almost going backwards to be innovative at the same time. So we hope that we're taking on those practices to grow our company and help for the greater good there.
Dylan, anything else to add here today that I didn't ask you about?
I think Pat made a good point there that, there's a lot of players in the space. And I think a big thing for us is that, we realize that whether it be grains and commodities that, we deal with, or if there's other projects out there that do livestock or forestry or fruits and vegetables, I think this partnership and collaboration, really builds on, like what I said, the collaboration part of it and getting it into products and, in the market. And a big thing for us is figuring out how we can all come together and unify the market instead of necessarily competing against each other. Because, like Pat said, there's plenty of ways for all of us to succeed in this space. So I think that's all I got to add from that.
Well, thank you so much, Dylan. Again, I want to thank my guests for joining me here on a show today. This has been a great interview. Dylan Vaca, he is a brand and marketing manager for Delong Company, and they are the company that hosts the Grown Climate Smart program that we've been talking about. Also, a big thank you to Pat McQuillan. He is the co-founder and president of Central Standard Craft Distillery in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Thanks for tuning in to this edition of the Ag Queen Podcast with your host, Lori Boyer.